Welcome, everyone. My name is James Ewell. I have the pleasure today of introducing Patricia Corrales. You know, it's interesting, as I read her bio, you know, she's a former immigration attorney. And, you know, the government is so interesting. They got all these three-letter initials: IRS, CIA, FBI. She worked for the ICE. So that's the Immigration Customs Enforcement Agency. She worked there for over 17 years. Her two kids are sitting in the back, and they're going to be ignoring mom for the time that she's up here. And in 2012, she left to form her own firm, and she works now in Pasadena, right?
I do. Mm-hmm.
And with that, I'll be quiet. Oh, one last thing. I got some. I'll card you when it's time. We're going to leave some time for questions, and I just need to have you fill out the evaluations at the completion. Okay? So, Patty, it's all up to you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I had hoped that we'd have a fuller class, but my name is Patty Corrales, and I have a show here in Monrovia called Justice Matters, where I talk about legal issues affecting the Monrovia community as well as the immigrant community in relationship to criminal issues and immigration issues. And we're here to discuss immigration issues, and I can certainly start off with letting the class, I wish it was fuller because it's livelier when we have a fuller class and we can debate things. But I can start off the class with letting the class know, or the folks here know, that what's going on with immigration today. We have heard, I'm certain everyone has heard about this influx of young undocumented children to our country coming from Central America, you know, flooding our borders. And word of the President Obama making any kind of changes for immigration, and what will he do? Well, unfortunately, there are many individuals out there who prey on folks who are undocumented, prey on individuals who are immigrants and let them know, oh, there's certain reliefs for you. There's certain ways for you to become a resident in this country or a U.S. citizen in this country. Come to our firm and we can help you fill out these applications. There's this new change in the law. Well, I want to make certain that everybody, at least here, who is present and knows folks that may be in this type of situation, relay the message that there is absolutely no change in the law at the moment, okay? The president has taken no action at all in regards to the undocumented children who are coming here, who are seeking refuge in our country. And moreover, it's not clear if there's going to be a change in the law. What we're hearing is that come September 1st, come after Labor Day, the president is going to announce a decision that he's going to institute on his own, executive power, by his own executive authority. What does that mean? Most people don't understand the nature of executive authority, and I'd like to have a room full of participation, so don't feel shy if I ask you. Does everybody know what executive authority and executive power mean? That means the president's acting on his own, right? That means Congress had nothing to do with it, okay? That means the thing that he passes, or the thing that he does, is only good until he's the president. Once he leaves, the other president can revoke the decisions he makes, okay? And for whatever reason, this country seems to have, or our Congress seems to really have such a hatred toward our president that we cannot get anything legitimately passed through the Congress. So our president is forced to make these executive decisions on his own. And unfortunately, if we don't have anyone akin to him or like-minded like him coming in at the next term, it's unlikely that it's likely that the next president, particularly if he's a Republican, may in fact revoke everything he's done in his tenure as president in the United States. So what legitimate way can individuals absolutely obtain their residence in this country? Well, in 2012, our president passed what's called Deferred Action for Young Childhood Arrivals, what most people think of as the DREAM Act. Okay, I want to make clear there's no DREAM Act. There was a DREAM Act proposed, and it was killed in Congress. So there's nothing called a DREAM Act. What the president did in 2012 was pass what's called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. This allows young children who came to our country prior to 16 years of age and who have resided continuously in our country to apply through USCIS, not ICE, but through USCIS for an opportunity to remain here, but they don't have lawful status. They just get to stay here. And if they're approved, they're allowed to get work authorization, and through that work authorization, they can seek valid Social Security numbers and driver's license and things of that way, things of that matter. And that opens the door to many of these young children who came here who probably think that they were U.S. citizens, and I've come to find out I'm not. But this opens a pathway for them. Now, that was instituted in 2012, and that was only good for 2 years. And so we were wondering what was going to happen. Well, was the president going to renew it? Was it going to be canceled after 2 years? And if it's canceled after 2 years, were these children who applied and got this protection, if you will, were they going to be placed in proceedings to be deported from our country? And the DACA, which we know it as DACA, was renewed this year, and it was renewed for those who deferred. There were a group of folks who first got deferred action right when it was passed up until August. In August, the actual deferred action opened up to everybody. And then there's a separate renewal process for those individuals who obtained deferred action after August. I've brought some instructions from USCIS as to how you can renew your DACA. If you know anyone or anyone in your community who has this deferred action application, they must apply to renew that deferred action 4 months prior to the expiration of their employment authorization card. So if their employment authorization card says it expires on such and such a date, they have to file 4 months prior to that date. Otherwise, they risk, one, not getting it renewed in a timely fashion. And so if you miss it by, let's say, 3 or 4 days, well, that individual now has accumulated unlawful presence in the United States for that period of time. And that unlawful presence can affect that individual in future applications should they be eligible for immigration relief in the future. So right now, what we do have for these young children, and I'm going to take questions in a minute, Marlene, is the deferred action for childhood arrivals and the renewal process. If you renew, you've got 2 more years under this president. Do we know it's going to be renewed again? Many kids ask me, how many times can I renew? Well, we don't know. That's a very unanswerable question because we have no idea what the next president may do. What we do know is that it exists today. And if it exists today, take advantage of it today if you meet the qualifying factors. I want to make clear, though, that there's a lot of speculation, and you're going to see a lot of notaries, notarios, what we call notarios, or immigration consultants, who may say, oh, don't worry, keep renewing, or it's not, it's always going to be present. We don't know if DACA is always going to be in existence. All we know is that it's in existence today. And if we get another president, that other president can't revoke the executive decision that President Obama made in 2012. And let me tell you, Congress has tried many times to do that. They don't like it. They consider this a free ride for many of these young kids. To me, it's not a free ride. To me, these children, I was an immigrant. And I cannot imagine none of us are not from immigrant families. We all are. This country is based on our immigration history. So many of these kids that I've helped come to me, they didn't even realize that they were not U.S. citizens. They grew up here. They went to school here. They have friends here. This is their country. And only to come find out because they want to go on and succeed in college that they're not permitted to because they don't have valid Social Security numbers to register. So that's how they come to learn about their story, that, hey, maybe I don't have papers here. This is a way to help these young children to obtain some sort of legal permission to remain here with work authorization. It does not give these children legal status whatsoever. Marlene, you had a question.
Are the parents legal or illegal or both?
You can have some parents that are legal and some parents that are illegal, so it varies. It depends on the circumstances of each family. But now there's a little loophole I want to talk about if you have any individuals who you know have deferred action. A young lady came to my office the other day, and she married a U.S. citizen. She got deferred action. She applied. When it came out, she had gone to school all her life here. She was going to college in Citrus College. She was trying to get her nursing degree, and she fell in love, married a U.S. citizen. Problem is that all this time she's been here unlawfully. So the unlawful status that she has counts against her. It's very complicated in immigration law, very complicated. But now she's married to a U.S. citizen. What can she do? Well, the U.S. citizen can petition her and try to immigrate her to the United States. But in doing so, because she was here in unlawful status, she would have to apply for what's called a waiver, an unlawful presence waiver, a waiver like a, forgive me for my illegal entry, my illegal residence in the United States, but grant me this waiver because it would be an exceptional and unusual hardship on my U.S. citizen spouse if I'm not allowed to remain, if I'm not given this waiver and I'm not allowed to process through the consulate and come back as a resident. So they have that option of consular processing with the waiver. But with deferred action kids, there's something that's called advanced parole. That means if you can present a legitimate reason for you having to travel outside the United States, medical or school or business, and you apply for advanced parole from the USCIS and they grant it to you, then you can leave the United States with permission of the United States and come back with permission of the United States. That return entry counts as a legal entry. And now that young man or woman won't have to process through the consulate, which is always enormously difficult and risky, but can process here in the United States all the papers because she has now a legal entry. And so that's an opportunity for deferred action individuals to obtain. It's a very complicated process, but it's a process that is nonetheless available to these young kids. So how does it work? So this young lady came to me, she's married to a U.S. citizen, and she's got the opportunity of a lifetime. She wants to take this really important class that they're only teaching in Mexico. So she wants to, it's some sort of nursing related curriculum. And they invited her and they offered her a scholarship for that. So I told her, well, we can apply for this advanced parole, seek permission based on the fact that you have this, this education you want to obtain, and see if USCIS grants your advanced parole. We did. We documented the fact that she was offered this scholarship, the fact that she would be going to this, this school in Mexico. It took close to 3 months to get USCIS to approve the application, but she approved it. My client went off, finished her course, which was a 3-week course, came back now with permission from the United States government, and that allowed that permission, that little card that allowed her to enter, now counts as a legal entry. And now I can adjust her status. I can now change her status from just a deferred action recipient, which has no legal status, to that of a lawful permanent resident through the petition her U.S. citizen husband now is going to file. So I wouldn't call it a loophole because a loophole implies that it's not part of the law. Advanced parole is certainly within the law, within the boundaries of the law, and it's something that the law permits deferred action individuals to obtain. So this is one way for deferred action recipients to still obtain legal status if in fact they meet the other requirements. They're married to a U.S. citizen, or they have a U.S. citizen's parent that can petition them, things like that. So that's available for our young youth.
Is there an age range on that deferred action?
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. Who's heard of deferred action? Okay. Well, my kids have heard it because I talk about it all the time. But deferred action, what young kids often come to my office and say, I want to apply for the DREAM Act. It's not DREAM Act. It's called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And you have to show that you entered the United States prior to 16 years of age. You also have to establish that you resided continuously in the United States since June 12, 2007 until the present time, until the time you actually file that application. You also have to establish that at the time the president announced this great opportunity for our young children, you were under the age of 31. If you were 31, it's too late for you. Okay, so that's a little tricky because you have a lot of inexperienced attorneys or consultants that many of our immigrant community go to that may not understand that one little qualification. And that is, if you were, let's say, 30 on June 12, 2012 and not yet 31, but you don't apply for deferred action because of money reasons or whatever reasons, because you're lazy or whatever, until 2014 now, when you're 31 and a half, kind of coming to 32, you're still eligible for deferred action. It's the fact that you were under 31 at the time the president announced the program. That's what is the qualifying factor. And then you also have to establish that you were here on June 12, 2012, when the president announced that. What sort of documentation do you need? Well, certainly, and then of course, one of the most important requirements is that you have to show that you graduated from high school or equivalent GED program during college or in the military. There's other factors, because this was really for the youth who are really interested in continuing their education. So let's say you didn't graduate from high school, which I've encountered many kids who haven't. Is it too late for you? Enroll yourself in a GED program and go to your GED program? And no, it's not too late. You have to either show that you've graduated from high school or are in a certified GED program or a member of the military, and there's other additional criteria if you don't fit one of the two most obvious ones. So if you're not a graduate of high school, get into a certified GED program. And if you meet all the other factors, you're eligible for a deferred action. Now, what if you have, and what we've encountered too is, let's say, and I worked for ICE. I worked for Homeland Security for 17 and a half years. I was a senior attorney with them. My responsibilities at that time weren't necessarily to go to removal or deportation proceedings to attempt to deport individuals. That really wasn't my responsibilities. My responsibilities were more in the nature of, I handled a lot of the national security cases and the complex criminal immigration issues. But on occasion, I did go to proceedings where people are being placed to be deported and had to defend our government in that way. So I'm quite familiar with the process. And one thing I want to say is with USCIS, it's its own different kind of entity, although it's part of the Department of Homeland Security. USCIS has jurisdiction over these deferred action applications, and not necessarily, well, ICE does for a very significant smaller part of the population, those who are in detention and are applying for deferred action. ICE has jurisdiction on those cases. But let's say you're not in detention and you're applying for deferred action and you didn't go to high school. So you enroll in a GED program and you think, okay, I'm enrolled, and that's it. USCIS actually checks to see if you are going through the GED process. If you're not, they're going to deny your application. So it's not the mere I'm enrolled. You actually have to attend, and you have to show evidence that you've attended your GED program. I had a client who came, we applied, and this was the only thing that he had, and I told him very frankly, I don't think you're going to get approved, even though you graduated from high school, because your entire grades were D's and F's. Okay, I don't know how you graduated, dude, but the fact of the matter is, even though you have a nice little high school certificate that says you graduated, and it certainly wasn't from Monrovia High, so that's good. I told him, you're going to waste $465, which is what the application costs. Okay, you're going to waste that, and you're going to waste paying me money. I started my career as a prosecutor, prosecuted for 25 years, and now I'm defending. I love the law. The law is something that I'm passionate about. I'm not here to gain money. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to make sure that people understand the law and people either abide by the law, or we can protect people so that the law doesn't take advantage of individuals, because the law does often take advantage of people. And so I told this young man, I said, you can apply, you're going to waste all this money because they're going to deny you. But I graduated from high school. The purpose of deferred action, the intent was to help kids who are youth, young youth, to really have an opportunity to go to school, to go to college, to make an impact in this community. Okay, that was the purpose. Okay, it wasn't really to help you get a employment authorization card so you can, work at Popeyes in all your life. It really wasn't that. The purpose was to help these young children, okay, these young youths, to excel, to take advantage of their dreams, to become doctors, to become lawyers. I mean, we had an immigrant a Mexican national who went to law school, became a lawyer, and then wasn't allowed to take the bar. but fought it, sued the state of California, and then he was allowed to take the bar. But what I'm saying is the purpose of deferred action was really to allow these children to follow their dreams. So he insisted. I said, they're gonna deny you, but he insisted. So we put forth the best case. We documented the fact that he was a slow learner and that he had issues with learning disabilities, and it was never picked up at the public school, so he never was offered IEP programs, that had he been offered that, he would have certainly gotten better grades than D's and F's. And it was denied. It was denied because it is a discretionary decision. They don't have to give you deferred action. The government doesn't have to give you deferred action. And on a discretionary issue, it's very difficult to win those. And so, it was unfortunate. It was one of my very first denials, and I had to sit down and talk to him. I said, I kind of knew this was happening. I knew that this was going to come because it's, yes, a high school diploma in, or evidence that you graduated from high school is one of the criteria, but they do still look at your grades. I mean, they do look at that. They look at other factors. It is a discretionary determination. So be cognizant of that too. And if you don't continue to be enrolled in a GED program, yes, they can also deny you for that too. And that's, or ask for more evidence, proof that you are attending the GED program. So that's deferred action. Anybody have any questions in relationship to that?
So I have a question prior to that.
Of course.
I am the head of a religious group in Southern California, Nevada, and we are being involved with the children.
Oh, wonderful.
Who we are holding. I'm also a retired U.S. Navy chaplain, 21 years of service, combat veteran, who have worked with refugees in the past, Cuban and Haitians.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand all the complications that come behind receiving refugees. My question is, what is ICE doing to provide a better living place for these kids while they wait for the future, which we don't know what's going to happen? And are we looking at separating those who can be brought in refugee under a refugee status from those who can't?
That's a very compounded question, but I'm going to try to address that if I can. One of the speculations that we heard was that our president was going to announce, if you will, I wouldn't say an extension. I think extension is the incorrect term, but an expansion of deferred action. So kids who were recipients of deferred action, their parents, if their parents were here unlawfully, the parents would also be able to obtain some kind of deferred action status. That was the speculation. Of course, nothing happened. There is still speculation that could happen when he comes back in September. But so that would help a lot of these young kids who are detained. But let me talk to you about that. Many of you are very young kids here, many young adults here. So you may not remember this. I'm an old soul. I've been around forever. I've been practicing forever. Who remembers in the 60s when the Cuban children, when the Cuban children were sent over to this country? Between 1961 and 1962, 14,000 Cuban children were sent to our countries, fleeing communist Cuba. Their parents, just like the parents in Central America, said goodbye to their kids with the thought that I'm never going to see my child again, because we don't want them to be here in communist Cuba. Those children are called Peter Pan children. Okay, and you know that the head USCIS director is a Peter Pan, what we call a Peter Pan child. So Alejandro Mayorkas, who heads up the USCIS, is a Peter Pan. When they came over to this country, the Baptist church, many of the churches helped these young kids. And within a year, they became residents. There wasn't this ongoing hesitation, ongoing discussion, ongoing why should they get anything. There was bring them in. The geopolitical situation, however, was much different back then. We were afraid back then of big bad communism. Okay, we didn't want communism. And Cuba provided something that the United States wanted. Cuba was right next door to Russia. So there was all that going on. And so this country embraced these kids without a blink an eye, without all the fight that we hear about it, without all the baseless accusations that children were bringing in diseases and things like that. We said, bring them in, and we gave them resident status within a year. And part of the reason is because the Cuban American community, they're a very strong political community. They are tight, and they have a lot of political power. So the Cubans have a very special law as it relates to them, where they become residents within a year and a day of coming to our country. Not so much the children that are coming from the Central American, what I call the triangle states, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador. I'm a woman of faith, and my faith tells me this. Until you live by their shoes, you can't speak as to the horror that they went through. Unless you know what you've lived through, what they've lived through in their countries, you don't know what they've gone through. These individuals, these kids, 9, 10, and I helped a 10-year-old get out of custody from detention just recently. They're children of God. Okay, they're coming here for a better life because in their countries they have enormous violence going on. You're looking at countries where a lot of the people that we've deported, that are gang members, have gone back to those countries and have just taken over in terms of the violence, in terms of the corruption there. And there's no fighting chance for these kids. These kids are being recruited day in and day out to join these gangs, and they have no way of being protected. Their governments, unfortunately, and with all due respect to those who are here from those countries, are corrupt. The law enforcement entities that they have don't really police those countries like you have here. So people say, well, we have violence in the United States. You know, I don't know if you saw the video coming from Chicago. A lot of the residents in Chicago were complaining about us taking in these kids. And I think their message was, well, let's take care of our own here in the United States first before we, take care of anybody else. I want to ask one person, who doesn't have an immigration history? We all are immigrants in this country, okay? So we are taking care of our own. We're all taking care of our brothers and sisters. And here's the difference. In this country, we actually do have police that police. We have police that actually do, protect us, who do, provide law enforcement. Not in those countries. They don't. And so the corruption there is to such an extent that these kids feel they have no other obligation but to come. And they come sometimes by themselves. Now, this story that I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to name names, but it's a little boy that I just got out of detention from ICE. And actually, it's not ICE, it's CBP. It's Customs Border Patrol. And Customs Border Patrol detained this little boy as part of the other group of kids that came over. He came by himself. He didn't come with a coyote. Do you know what the word coyote means? Have you guys heard of that? That's someone who's paid money to bring in your child illegally into the United States. Do those people exist? Absolutely, they exist. Sometimes families they spend years raising money to pay someone to bring their child back. Okay? His family didn't have money to pay a coyote. Another neighbor in their village was also so afraid of the pandillas, which is the gang members, that they were going to come, and they offered to bring their son. Somehow in the middle of the trip, when they were crossing into, they're from El Salvador, so they were, and I'm not good with geography, but they were crossing into another country before they got to Mexico. The father of this family got a bright idea to see if he could kidnap and ransom the young boy, because they ran out of money. And so he called his friend, allegedly his friend that he grew up with, and said, oh, I have your son, but I'm not going to bring him to the United States. I'm going to leave him here so he can die unless you send us money. We want $10,000. This family didn't have $10,000. They barely had $100 to their names. And the father was so desperate to get his son back that he went to his church and he asked for the assistance of his church. And every church member donated, whatever they could, and they were able to raise close to $4,000. And he told the guy that, this is all I have, but I want my son back. They somehow got the money to this man, and the man did not follow through and did not bring the son to the United States. He left that boy. He left that boy by himself. And this is very true, and NPR is featuring the story, so I hope you would hear the story of my client on Monday if NPR has it. He left that boy. That boy came by himself. When he left his country of El Salvador, he was 9. When he came to our country, he was 10 years of age when he arrived. He was so scared. He's such a beautiful little boy. He was so scared, but such an enormous amount of courage because he came. He wanted to be with his parents. Border Patrol picked him up at Texas with a group of other kids. And he kind of latched on to other kids because there was a lot of kids coming, and Border Patrol picked him up. You could tell he was in shock. And yet Border Patrol decided to detain him and these kids in a facility with other adults. And there was an agreement where Border Patrol cannot house these children with adults. They have to put them in like a shelter situation where they will have access to social services and get cleaned up and get medical attention. They can't be with adults, okay, for various obvious reasons. And yet, when these kids came, they first were housed with adults. And the father had learned or got a hold of my name from someone else, one of my clients, and he called me and he said, "Desperate, what can I do? I haven't seen my son." I got a call. He got a call from Border Patrol because Border Patrol takes information from these kids to find out if they have any relatives here, and they kind of trace down where the relatives are. And there's a wonderful organization here in the United States, or here in Los Angeles, called the Esperanza Project that works a lot with these kids, and they're just phenomenal. And anyways, so the father came to me and he said, "I have this number of the Border Patrol agent," and I called, and I have to say that I was somewhat disappointed with my former colleagues. I mean, I don't know everybody, but I call them former colleagues because we were all worked together with Homeland Security, and he was very rude. He's like, "Oh, I'm not even going to look for this kid." And sometimes you got to do what you have to do. I called up people I know in D.C. and found out where this boy was, and got him released within 2 days to his dad. And now my client is happily in the safeguard of his family. And it's going to be a struggle, but I consider him a refugee. I consider him a refugee when he fled from his country, from the violence from his country. And then I consider him also a victim of trafficking. Because the moment that father decided to become a criminal and extort money from his alleged friend that he grew up with, he became a criminal, and my client was at risk of being trafficked. So now I'm going to see if I can apply for a sort of trafficking visa for him, for kids.
I've heard on the news, probably 1 or 2 times, they don't bring it to me, that these children are being used as mules to bring drugs. Is there any proof of that?
There's no proof of that. And I'll tell you, it's very interesting to me. I know my time is up, but I can talk about this forever. It's interesting to me that the media that was at one time very supportive of our president and always had him up on a pedestal is now turning their back at this president and creating these baseless and foundless statements that these kids are being used at meals. Could they? Yes, it's possible. Are they? No. These children are actually fleeing violence, and very horrific type of violence. We're not talking about that these gang members just shoot you or anything like that. No, they dismember you, and there's evidence of that. They don't just, hit you until you're black and blue. No, they cut off your hands. They cut off your head. They actually torture individuals. So I do believe that these children are coming because of violence. But could they be used as mules? Absolutely. I mean, is the possibility there? Yes. Are they bringing diseases? My gosh, no. Okay, but remember, some of these kids come from very poor countries, from very poor situations. So maybe they don't take baths every day. Maybe they do have lice. They don't come purposely to bring infections to our country, which is what the media is trying to, show that, oh, look what they're bringing. They're kids. My client, who was 9 years old, trekked thousands and thousands of miles to come to Texas. He never once took a bath. He couldn't. I mean, he'd wash his face. He didn't brush his teeth. I mean, was he not clean? Yes, but does that mean we turn them away? We don't turn them away. We help. That's what this country is based on. That's what our Christian principles and foundations require of us to do. I'm sorry, go ahead. All right. And there's so many other reforms, other immigration relief that I wanted to talk about. The married to U.S. citizen, the pardons, I wanted to get all into that, but I guess.
Yeah, you got one track, but that's okay, no problem. One of the things what we see, and maybe it's because we California, but the fact of the matter is, immigration is not just for a Spanish-speaking portion of our society.
No.
Immigration affects
Nigerians, Haitians, Chinese, you name the gamut. We're all immigrants, so it just doesn't affect the Latinos.
What portion? Why on this side of the country it may be predominantly Central and South American countries, but what portion of that entire immigration, when you were in on the other side, would it break out? Can you remember some numbers?
I don't know if I can statistically provide, numbers, but I can say that a great deal of our people that I would see in court were from the Latino community and the Chinese community. We have a lot of Nigerians here in this country. Now, there's always going to be bad apples in whatever community you have. I mean, you're going to have great people, and you're going to have people who are not so great, people who actually do commit crimes. And that's even people who are naturally born in this country. So, I get this notion in my 20 plus years working for the government. I've always was very open to the reasons why people do what they do. But I guess what I would say is this stigma that immigrants commit crimes, that's not necessarily true. We have Americans who are born here who commit crimes. I mean, you're going to have criminals anywhere, coming from every community, but they're not all of us, or all the immigrants who are coming to this country are bad people. Some of them actually are phenomenal people who could just make this country even better. I'm going to just talk about this one last story about this one beautiful, beautiful little girl, goes to Monrovia High School. Okay, a beautiful little girl. She comes from a Chinese background. She came here to live with her aunt. She came here on a visitor's visa, which for many of you, if you're an immigrant, that's a fantastic way to come in, because now it opens a little more doors for you, okay? But she's overstayed her visa. She decided to go to school here and, is hoping to graduate soon, or I think actually graduated maybe last year. Nonetheless, she came to me and said, can I apply for this deferred action? And unfortunately, she couldn't, because when she came to our country, she was just above 16 years of age. So she misses the opportunity to apply for deferred action. But here's a young girl who is an amazing math whiz kind of guru like my son is. She's into chemistry and all this stuff, and I could say, why aren't you should go to MIT, you should go to Caltech, you should go to these places, because you're going to do something, you're going to create something for our country. She can't. And the only other way is for her to marry a U.S. citizen, so he can immigrate her. And I said, don't get married until you finish your education. You don't need to get married. We wait. But there has to be some better way. There has to be a comprehensive immigration reform that won't scare the right-wing Republicans, okay? And I want to meet a right-wing Republican who isn't an immigrant, who doesn't have an immigration history of his own, because I'm sorry, that is crap that none of them are so righteous enough that they don't have any immigration history. That is baloney. I could say much worse. Okay, so we need people like you to advocate for comprehensive immigration reform. These people are not asking for free rides. They're not. Will some of them ask for free rides? Yes, but that's in every culture. Okay, that's not just limited to immigrants. So give these individuals a chance, but voices need to be heard. Calls need to be made. I make calls, and my ex-colleagues think I've become a traitor. I'm not a traitor. My passion has always been the law, and if the law allows these individuals to get relief or to get immigration status in this country, then I'm doing the right thing. Doesn't matter what side I'm in. Well, thank you very much. I wish we had more people come.
Yeah.
And there's some information up here on deferred action if
Right.
anybody
Patty
wants.
did have a lot of notes. I think we're talking about a person that obviously knows the field, and so I believe we were privileged to share a few moments with her. Kids were back there cooperative, being quiet. I saw them fighting a little bit though, but overall they were pretty good. Again, I thank you for coming. Just leave your evaluations on the desk. That'd be fine. I got a little candy over there if you'd like a little candy. I didn't get any over to you guys. And then we also thank our video people for their presence, and I got some candy over there for them too. Have a great day. You have another class that's going to be taken up in about 10 minutes or so. Appreciate everybody's attendance and participation. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Felix, for coming. Good questions. Yes. So nice of you to come. Thank you so much. Thank you.